I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist, and in 1996 I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
We've both been skull and bone, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on. I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest. Number 322.
I sad duty to report this afternoon that my friend and colleague, Tim Russert, collapsed and died early this afternoon.
I may die in this cell tonight or in the arena tomorrow. I am a slave. What possible difference can I make?
And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
What is up? Welcome to Already Dead, me and Austin's weekly conspiracy variety show. Today we're joined by the Paranoid American. If you guys, we've been trying to do these on like Tuesdays and stuff. Oh, I think that's our producer trying to figure stuff out behind the scenes. I don't know what you just did, but want to stop that? There we go. But anyways, yeah, so this is our new weekly show we're doing. We changed it to Thursday for this week because I think Paranoid over here goes by or has a weekly show on Tuesday as well. So we had to accommodate.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no big deal. Whatever, I just moved some things around. But next we're starting back up weekly on this coming Tuesday again. We'll have Shane Cashman on. This will be episode 300 of my show. So pretty cool to have Shane back on for that. I do want to get started. I know we just, well, first off, I guess before we go on a down note, is that the first time you've seen that edit, bud?
First for me, yeah.
Well, wait, no, I'm talking about that edit it just played, the intro. I
know okay. I thought you were talking about the PSYOPs thing.
Also, what do you want to go by? Because Paranoid just feels weird. Should I?
Yeah, I mean, I have a real name. It's Thomas. It's not a secret, but a majority of people just call me Paranoid now. Like it's my first name, and I go with it. I'm fine.
It feels weird. Like maybe if there's a shorter version of it, Paranoid just seems too long and too specific of a term. It's
you can call me Thomas, T, P, PA, whatever the hell, man. I don't really care.
Okay, PA's not bad. All right, Tommy. I like Tommy. All right, yeah. Is that the first time you've seen that edit? Because I think that goes hard, and I like to get the guest impression.
The intro was dope, man. In fact, there was like a few faces that I'm not even sure I recognized, but a lot of them were pretty nice deep cuts. I can't believe you show the full Zapruder footage, like even the specific frames. It's pretty good. That's pretty gangster.
Yeah, no, that's at the Thin Line 123, who actually I'm about to play another one of his edits, but it's a little more sad. We have I don't know. First off, were either of you familiar with PSYOPs, the account on Twitter, or no, not really?
I'm not.
No.
Recently, I'm definitely been more. Fine. I found his work more recently, and then I had no idea that there was some potential loss here, but.
Yeah, well, for those who follow the show for a long time, I've used, I kind of take like Twitter edits and I like to use those as intros because I just think they're awesome. I've used a few Jinx ones, and I usually try to, I don't believe in IP. You guys know my political beliefs, but just out of being courteousness, I will be like, hey, are you cool with me using this? Because it's like, some people are weird, and you're like, oh, you're using my content. And you're like, you just are throwing it out on Twitter for free. Like, would you like me to use it for an intro? And he was one of the guys who was like, hell yeah, go for it. And he's been one of the cool guys, within this parapolitics space. I don't know. I'm sure you've experienced this, Tommy, But like anyone to the right of like I don't know, any commie is like usually like shunned within the parapolitics community. They immediately look for everything. If you like to have fun, then you're a shitcoat, I guess, or something. So that's how that side of it goes. So just people like that, even interacting, just like, dude, he's a cool dude. He's a real ass dude. He's one of the real anon community guys. But it sounds like he may or may not be with us anymore. That seems to be the going rumor. I think it's kind of fair to say, I mean, and the nature of him being an anon, I mean, we don't even know. For all I know, he could have been some sort of fed op for some reason and just fucking
Get reassigned.
Yeah, he got reassigned, but like whatever, that fed op was to produce dope ass edits that spoke the truth. So okay, whatever, weird op, dude. But like either way, like point being is I don't think we'll ever really know if he is passed, but essentially he had told some people on Twitter that he was a little bit closer to a while back that he had stage 3 cancer, and so was kind of taking a step back from Twitter. And I know someone, BX, has been on the show, said she kind of regularly kept touch with him after learning of that, and he usually would get back with her within a couple days or so, but has been since December since she's heard from him. So given the stage 3 cancer and the combination of factors, I'd say he's likely really, really, really not doing well or no longer with us. So if someone does have more information, I mean, I would like to know. I don't know what we really could do other than like, say if he is still alive, let him know we're thinking of him. I definitely don't have any money to give to whatever cause, but just, I don't know. I mean, I did want to kind of remember him because I do think he's a real ass dude and he deserves it. He's kind of spit truth. Anyone who really likes this corner of Twitter, he was a big name in there. So dropped some cool shit. So I'm not trying to get too sappy, but yeah, I just wanted to take a moment for that to recognize him because I have used a lot of his edits. I mean, and I don't want to give anyone the illusion we were close friends or anything, but I think we were brothers in arms and memes. So it was I don't know, just weird seeing him gone.
In his edits, he can live on, right?
Yes, exactly. And with that, I think it's fitting that the guy who did the edit for this show kind of did this, and it's almost like a passing the baton. I guess it's self-appointed, but I think it's appropriate for a GUA or at the thin line 123. So let's play this through. I guess you could almost say a moment of silence, but it's not silent. We're just going to kind of watch this video and about 2 minutes, and then we'll get into the show. right, now we probably successfully have a copyright infringement, but I think it was worth it.
Do eulogies count as fair use?
Right. For me, it made me tear up a little bit seeing that, because especially if you know the characters involved and stuff. I know it's stupid and non-shit, but it matters to me, damn it, okay? Well, all right, now that we got through that, we addressed that, we had our moment of silence for the Real SG, PsyOps, I guess let's get into it. Me and Austin today both watched your, I guess a good place to start is we watched your documentary on adrenochrome, and I've never really dug too deeply. I always just kind of like, I mean, it was one of those things where I'm like, I guess I wouldn't be fucking surprised. Like, you know, like they are evil cunts, and like they clearly are, especially when you dig into other stuff, like they're clearly doing some fucking weird satanic shit to kids. So it's like, it's not really that much of a jump for me. Yeah, this one, it kind of, I guess, made it more like, yo, maybe there is that shit, and maybe we should be, that is, maybe there's something to it. So I guess that's kind of it gives you a lot to go with, but I guess thoughts?
Well, I mean, my introduction, by the way, to adrenochrome was basically through my pop culture interests when I was younger, just coming up. I idolized Hunter S. Thompson when I was young, so that got me in a lot of trouble. But at the same time, like that was where I basically was introduced to the concept, and then throughout that, Kubrick and Clockwork Orange and all of that. But it was mainly pop culture influences that introduced those concepts to me to begin with. And I wasn't originally, like, when I got into any of this parapolitical like realm, I was just, that's not where I came from. Like, honestly, I was more seduced by the cultural Marxism that's within the public school system. And I had a lot of really bad ideas that I had to, work through. But yeah, so I'm just now more recently really entertaining a lot more than I ever have in my life. And certainly with a lot of the satanic ritual abuse that I know.
Yeah, that's where you've been spiraling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm like,
and look at this sex cult that fucks kids, and look at this sex cult. Look at these CIA ties. Look at these CIA ties.
100% been my experience, and typically there are some direct connections involving some satanic Anubis cult in Belgium, or the cult of Abraxas, or which I always found hilarious with Sam, like. Because when I would hear Sam talk about Abraxas, the chicken snake god and shit, I would just laugh. But then I'm doing my Detro episode, and I'm like, holy fucking shit, Abraxas, the chicken snake god. You know what I mean? Like, and so anyway, I would definitely like to know, first of all, how were you introduced to the concept? And I know you worked for Disney for a time, because I did hear you back at some point. I heard you on Tinfoil. And I remember some of that story, which I always found pretty extraordinary, just different, something that most people probably haven't, have any real, exposure to. But anyway, I'm curious, because I don't even know really, like, where you fall on within the political spectrum, if you even would. I don't know. Like, so anyway. Get into it.
I've been through the whole game, so I'll answer all your questions.
Okay.
So I was at Disney
for a minute.
I
was
years.
Concerned with your glasses that you were just like frozen, because I see no expression, nothing. Just.
Well, that's why I've got the push behind me to let you know that.
I have that for reference now. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so I was at Disney for 10 years. I originally started there as like a graphic designer / programmer. I was gonna work on like little interactive things in the park and all kinds of like boring stuff that it wouldn't be as impressive as just saying Disney as like a wide thing. But then over time, I ended up getting really deep into like After Effects, and at the time Flash was really big. So I was doing a lot of like Flash animation, After Effects animation, and that just led to kind of getting into the animation angle. And it wasn't like sitting down and working on feature films. It was all the other like grunt work animation. But that's what I did. I worked at Disney doing animation for about 10 years. So that was where I got some of it. And then to answer where I came across adrenochrome, they actually give it to you in your first like trip. No, I'm just kidding. It was the exact same way that you did, Austin. It was through watching the movie Fear and Loathing, and I just remember Johnny Depp coming out, and or it was like
And then I
But
saw all
he's
these kids
talking
disappearing
about-
in tunnels in Disney, and I went,
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm like, and I think when that movie came out, I'm just gonna guess I was like 13 or 15 or something. I was like not old enough to drive or buy a pack of cigarettes, so I remember thinking like, these dudes are doing like every drug I've ever heard of, and now they're saying this thing is like they're afraid to do this. So it always kind of etched itself in my mind, and I absolutely recognized the Drencrom in the back of Clockwork Orange when they all go to like the Moloko, the milk bar. That's one of the little references, and that's not a coincidence. Like that, those are direct ties, which my documentary gets into. But that's my first impression was fictional. So, and then we'll get into all the other ones too. But like my political, like I started by default Democrat because I grew up in a house with a public school teacher and a mailman. And my dad was apolitical. My mom, I assume, was probably left-leaning at the time. I got really no idea. But I do remember in elementary school that like Bill Clinton was the push. Like they were pushing for Clinton because he was like the nice dude versus like the mean guys or whatever. So by default, I was Democrat up until the Bush Gore. I was here in Florida through the whole Chad thing. That was my first vote ever. I voted for Gore because we had just been mandated to watch Inconvenient Truth it was like my senior year of high school. We had to watch it and we had to write a report on it. Like it was the thing. It was straight up indoctrination. So that all happens. And then after I leave, I joined the military, which is like the opposite of what you'd expect. I joined the military, and in the military, everyone's like in love with Bush because he wins and he raises everyone's pay. And it just like people were really pro Bush at that point, and it kind of was hard to.
Wait, when did you join?
I joined the end of August of 2001. So in my second week of boot camp, 9/11
I was trying to
happened.
date you because I joined in 2010. So I'm like, how old is this guy? You're probably like 8-9 years older than me. So
Yeah, so I'm like in my 40s right now.
Yeah.
So I joined straight out of high school right before 9/11 happens. Like I'm on the training pad. We're doing like drills and learning how to march in cadence. And all of a sudden 9/11, rocks the whole thing. But they didn't. That's another weird origin story of me, is that I didn't know about 9/11 for 2 weeks after it happened because they didn't want anyone to be distracted from the training in boot camp. And dude, that kind of rocked my brain of like, wow, something so massive that affected everyone. Because I remember after getting out of boot camp, everyone's like, yeah, we're just so American now. Like we just love each other. And I was like, really? Like it was just like a Tuesday for me or whatever. I don't even know what the hell day it was. You know what I mean? Like I don't remember where I was at.
Did that shake you to your senses at all? Because I feel like a lot of people have this like almost trauma when it comes to 9/11. I don't remember having that. I remember being like 7 or 8 and like just being like, to me, this bizarre abstract thing of like something happening out somewhere else, and I'm supposed to be incredibly upset about this. Why? Like, and I know it sounds awful to say, but like that's just my 8-year-old
Some
brain.
people did something. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, no, for real. But it was like, to me as an 8-year-old, it was no different than like than if like you showed me something happening in Bucharest. Like I'd be like, okay.
Well,
like,
my version of that
honestly,
was
that's pretty
Oklahoma.
rational thinking. So for you, I'm like, did you like not have that moment, and so you come out of boot camp and you're just thrown into the psychosis, and like I could see you being able to more readily see through the bullshit because you're like, dude, what the? You guys are all insane. Like, because you didn't have that moment. Like your moment was like way after they're already deep in it.
Well, actually, my moment was the first night in boot camp, before we even got our head shaved or any of that stuff. And this was like when I remember thinking, oh my God, MK Ultra is real. Because I had heard about it. I listened to Kill Army albums, and I was like, knew all about Behold the Pale Horse, but it was fiction. You know what I mean? It was the same thing as reading a Hunter S. Thompson novel or a William S. Burroughs novel. And it was all just 100% science fiction and poetry stuff. But I remember that first night, man, like these grown men, like jacked, you know what I mean? Like the TIs surrounding these little frail kids. The first time they've been away from their parents for more than like a few nights, right? And like, you'd have these three jack dudes yelling at a teenager, and they're all saying completely contradictive stuff. And I just remember like, there's
like, go
no
left,
way.
go right, turn around.
Yeah, like,
don't you turn around. Like, and they would do that shit too.
and dude, and you would, and I had like, my bunk was in the very back, like in the back corner. So I got in there first, and they tried to do that on me, but I kind of like scurried back and like started unpacking all my stuff. And I get to just watch everyone else coming in one by one. And it was like, at a certain point, it was like, oh, is this guy gonna have reaction A, B, or C? Because it was almost like everyone did certain things. Some people would snap in and just do whatever the last thing they heard, they would do that thing. Some people would freak the hell out. They're like, oh, that guy's just told me to do that in your toe. And like, they would try and have a conversation. And that was the worst thing, because then the TIs just yell even louder. And they try and like, I think they're trying to see everyone's breaking point and what happened.
Yeah.
So anyway, I see all that happening. And then once I realized, I was like, is that person going to do A, B, or C? I was like, damn, yo, this is mind control. Like, this is the thing that I've been reading about. It's real.
It really is, because people have this idea that like, you're going to go there, shoot guns, do that. And you do shoot guns, you do some combat.
It's so boring too. That's like the most boring part.
Yeah, it's not really training. Like, it's like you do it once so that they can check a box. But really what basic is like a nonstop, like, every little thing needs to be done this exact way. And even then, that may or may not actually, like, you know, keep you from getting yelled at or whatever negative consequence, but it's likely to. It is just a giant mind fuck. Like, people don't realize it's more about making sure your fucking locker at the end of your bed is properly organized, and oh, this thing is spaced 2 inches that way, and this thing is like this, and like every little like checklist detail of like, have this right, this right, this right. And even then, most of the time, like, if you do everything perfect, they'll find something and fuck with it anyways. Like, so but they'll do this thing where like, as you get further on training, they'll let back and give you this sense of agency as if like you're a good boy. But it really is just that you've been there longer, and they're just like, they're no longer fucking with you. And it's the weird thing is too, you can see the mentality in the TIs, because like, when you're there, a lot of people are like, that would be pretty fun. And it would kind of be kind of fun, because it is like,
oh,
you're just fucking with people. Like, that's all it is. Like, you're just like literally just dicking with people. And then later, you know, as you know, they chill. It's like no different in a lot of ways than a very exaggerated version of like, I don't know, normal team sports, but to an insane degree, because it's like you fuck with the new guy, and then as they get in, then you're like, you chill out, and you can be kind of cool with them. But there's still this like inborn hierarchy where like, I'm the team captain, you're a freshman, don't get too fucking comfortable. Like, so it's still there, you know what I mean? Like, but it is bizarre to see to that degree.
Well, and I was stationed on mostly training bases, even in my like, you know, full-time service, and I ended up becoming really close friends with guys that were TIs. And yeah, it's exactly what you say, man. Like, the best way I could equate it to, it'd almost be like hazing. Like, if you were to just be hazed every single day for 6 weeks, at least in the Air Force, it was only 6 weeks. I know other services go like 10, 12 or whatever. But just imagine getting like freshman hazed every day for 6 weeks straight. Some people straight up break. Some people ask to leave, and they've got all these ways for them to weed people out. And
the quickest
that's the
way
real
out
reason.
is through. They teach you that real quick. The quickest way out is through. Yeah. Yeah. And then by that point, now your training's relaxed, and you're far less likely to try anyways. And even then, there's still those like mechanisms in place that kind of push you back, and like, it's still going to be a giant pain in the ass if you're trying to get out. So this is why people, like, even military people, don't want to be in. They're literally just like kind of chasing to the end of the contract or whatever. Like, oh, like, that'll be the easiest time. But then by that time, life kicks in, and they have a wife, they have whatever, and they're like, I was saying that hard worse than like a normal job, really, you know? Yeah.
Well, the trajectory there was describing my politics. So I guess start out default left, join the military, become more neutral. Then I start reading like Creature from Jekyll Island and reading about like how the financial system works at a deeper level. Then I kind of feel like maybe I'm becoming conservative. And then Trump comes onto the scene, and I'm thinking like I'm almost like a 4chan troll conservative, where I just want to see some stuff burn. So let's get this guy in office and be a catalyst, not like a leader, but like the agent of change. And then he takes away bump stocks like it was nothing. So now I'm like, I hate all the different approaches. Like I've been through the Raids Against the Machine anarchist socialist phase when I was in a teenager. I grew out of that one. I feel like I've been through a lot of the other phases, and now I'm like the ultimate pessimist. I read Gustav Le Bon's The Crowd from the late 1800s, and he basically describes all society as catering to the dumbest person in the crowd, and that once a crowd forms, it can't hold any sort of logic or reason greater than the weakest link, and therefore almost all political systems and all systems in general that have to appeal to broad society always have to cater to like the dumbest among us, and we're kind of damned for that. So that's my political leaning now.
Oh, democracy, the
love
god
it.
that failed.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever dug into Hoppe, but that's an especially based avenue to take. Or you can go the Emma Goldman route, where she has like, she kind of writes in that too. She's very much elitist, even in her like anarcho-socialism, whatever the fuck. She's still very much.
Oh yeah, that was
like
my Rage Against the Machine phase. There was a lot of Emma
That was
Goldman
mine
in there.
too.
Yeah.
That's
Emma
hilarious.
Goldman very much had spite for the majority, for the
Oh, yeah.
masses. But,
And then you
yeah.
try to get a ticket for Rage Against the Machine concert, and you're like, wait a minute, what happened to
Gotta get vaccinated.
for how
baby.
much? $40 for what?
Yeah. Oh my god.
So do you
Oh,
think
we haven't
Adrenochrom's
even
legit?
mentioned. We forgot to mention the tragic death of the Juice Man.
Who?
Right?
R.I.P.
O.J.
OJ.
Simpson,
Oh,
man.
OJ. Oh, I don't give a fuck.
I saw Richard post some hilarious Reddit thread about how his son was the one who did it, and yeah, I read through it. It was, I don't know. It's interesting.
It's an interesting theory.
Yeah, it's interesting enough, right? But
You know,
but
it
yeah,
make you feel like a little more sympathy, because you're like, I don't know the whole angle, but it's
Right.
like you're covering for your kid. Like, I can understand, like, say
Right.
your only other person in your life kills everyone, you know, like,
Right.
It's very much like a Sophie's Choice. Like, do I send
really
this fucker
is.
off to jail?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, in a perfect world where we can control our own media, which may be in the soon with AI, but I want to see like a reboot of the Dexter series, but it's literally OJ and his son instead of Dexter and his dad. That would be
Dude.
like so dope.
That would be amazing. Do you remember Greta Van Susteren? She's like she was like a media personality. Well,
Yeah, she was like a
technically,
tamer Nancy Grace, like a skinnier
Yeah,
tamer Nancy
yeah.
Grace.
She got really big off of OJ, or at least when that scandal was happening, from what I remember, because like but what I found crazy is that prior to that, because she was basically just providing like legal analysis or whatever to CNN and Fox News or something like that in regard to analyzing the OJ trial. But yeah, that's her. And she apparently, before the OJ scandal happened, she's directly connected to Henry Vincent and the White House, or not the White House call girl. I've been reading too much about Watergate, but Henry Vincent and the Confessions of a DC Madam, who was working with, basically ended up. Do you know much about that? Because Nick Bryant wrote a book, I believe, with Henry Vincent.
I'm a little rusty on this just because I haven't been looking into this recently.
No, I understand, but honestly, it's again a sophisticated network, but I found it very interesting that she basically came in as his legal counsel, and he regretted this later because she kind of helped hammer in the final nail in his coffin in a way. And it turns out that, that network that Henry Vincent was running, which was basically just a gay escort service, that he had fallen in. He had fallen into this because he was kind of like a sexually repressed 26-year-old gay guy who like ended up, he was like a mortician as well. And he ended up going, and by the way, that's inevitably how his operation was kind of discovered, was through this financial scam that he was running, where he was just attributing all these funeral services to to like how he was actually able to take credit cards for his gay escort service. And so anyway, the bottom line was that I found it interesting that, directly involved with Henry Vincent and Craig Spence, I realized this network basically directly ties into the Franklin scandal and the Finders cult, because the second time Henry Vincent ever met Craig Spence, who I guess started hitting him up and inevitably was calling him every day and started spending 20 grand a month on this gay escort service. And so Henry Vincent's like, whatever, I guess I'll work with him. And then the second time he meets him, he comes into his house, and sitting on the couch with Henry Vincent was Lawrence E. King, who was running the pedophile network in the Franklin scandal. Yeah,
he's the main guy. And dude, also the Craig Spence is a wild story because he like took over this Japanese dude's like apartment and like just like kind of like kicked him out of it and started running shop there. And then he ends up writing a confession note in the Ritz-Carlton and then like apologizes for leaving it. Yeah, dude, that was actually one of the very first comic book art commissions. Was I had a professional DC artist that's worked on Batman and all sorts of major, and he drew Craig Spence for me, that death scene of Craig Spence on the bed, dead with the phone, and he's got the $2 in his pocket, like every little intricate detail. And then I had him draw Lawrence King for me because that artwork didn't exist anywhere out ever, especially I think this was like in 2006 or something. I had all this done, and I've actually seen it pop up again in the wild, where someone posts like, here's this picture of Craig Spence, or here's this picture of Lawrence King. And it's like, hell yeah. That's the reason why I commissioned that, was so that it exists for people to see it.
Dude, have you ever done a David Ferry? Have you ever done a David Ferry, like, or commissioned a photo of him?
I haven't. I have read deeply into it. There's a really good Periscope or Paranormal Press or something, and they go into like a really good interview with David Ferry, and I've talked to a lot of people about David Ferry
because I know he's a weird looking dude. I don't think I've ever actually looked at a photo of him.
Dude,
Ferry. But yeah, he's also like one of the hallmarks of like when people talk about everything's connected. You're like, dude's fucking got the Civil Air Patrol with fucking Oswald and Barry Seal.
Yeah, he's the eyebrow guy. If you've seen JFK, he's the one with the eye. Man, what the hell? Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
And dude,
that
Joe Pesci
wasn't an accurate representation because I think he was taller.
No, he looks even weirder, bro. The real David Ferry looks way weirder than Joe Pesci trying to look weird with polish on his eyebrows. It's crazy.
You look him up. I believe every story I've ever read about the guy, honestly.
But it made
you look at him and you're like, okay.
Dude, I did an episode the other day analyzing that CIA guy, whatever you see that like it's almost like that Project Veritas style type undercover thing that came out recently.
The butt pussy guy.
It's clearly like a guy trying to get laid by some like journalist that's like undercover. And like
it's like a Veritas thing.
And like I'm watching it with like Ken Silva and my buddy Clinton Russell, and like we're all kind of like, this seems like bullshit because like he's just so like very much like snappity kind of gay, like he whatever. And like and he was like almost like the George Santos of like CIA or like spooks, like, and so it was like hard not to love him in that way. And like he just seems so ridiculous, and I do think he probably is like very much embellishing shit. But you see this fucker, and you're like, but then you think of like characters like David Ferry, and you're like,
yeah, that's David.
There you go. Like, well, I don't fucking know. Maybe like like. Maybe this really is our spooks, like these weird fuckers that are just trying to get some butt pussy from some fucking lefty journalist, So,
I can't believe how many of them seem to lean toward either it's the pedophilia or they're 100% they were homosexual. And
you know what though? I think there's a reason for that. I mean, obviously, like in decades past. And this isn't even like a knock on homosexuality or whatever, like whatever, we can have that conversation. But like, it's just the idea that at one point in time, that was very much not culturally acceptable. And so that is like a, blackmail tool. So it's like you have someone under you. Like he clearly was probably fucking the Civil Air Patrol boys. Like he probably literally had like Oswald's dick in his mouth at one point. Like let's like he probably did. Like
I know his dream was to be like a Catholic priest, I believe, and it was because he was gay that he was ran out of that profession, at least allegedly. But I believe that even one childhood friend that was like a classmate of Barry Seal, he was named like John Odom, and he has like an insane statement about flying, like, because when Barry Seal was still in high school, he was basically running operations already, like, which is totally insane. And so this John Odom guy, who was one of SEAL's classmates, he said that one Friday evening while they were in high school, he got a call from Barry, and Barry asked him if he'd like to fly with him in the morning over to Lacombe, which was a little town on the North Shore across from Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans. And he said they left about 5:30 in the morning and flew over to this little airport there. And when they got off the plane, there was a guy on the tarmac dressed all in black military fatigues, black boots, a black beret. He was sitting in a director's chair, drilling a bunch of Civil Air Patrol cadets, all carrying the old M1 rifles, standing in formation in front of him. His name was David Ferry. He was a captain in the Louisiana Civil Air Patrol, and he had fake eyebrows, real weird, with one eyebrow turned up at a 45-degree angle. I laughed when I saw him, and Barry didn't like that.
Yeah.
And told me to stay by the plane, or he wouldn't let me fly back with him to Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he claimed that he saw Ferry point to the 50 or so wooden crates staged next to the tarmac. And on the way back to Baton Rouge, Barry Seal told him that he was working for Ferry, who he said was CIA, which we now know. And Victor Marchetti talked about this, who was the former deputy director or assistant to Richard Helms, who, by the way, Richard Helms, dude, and Seal said that he was making $400 a week flying runs of crates of weapons and ordnance for Ferry. That's what he told this John Odom.
Yeah.
So, and he was like, "You want to make that kind of money?" And he's
Wasn't he
trying to
making the
recruit
equivalent
him.
of like $120K a year, like as a teenager, like running
Seems
shit.
that
I think
way.
it's,
I mean, that's crazy.
yeah.
You know, but when you get in, I just can't believe how all roads, like it, depending on what I'm researching at the time, at
it all
this
leads
point,
back to fucking kids.
what the fuck, you know? But like clearly, there's
That dude was into Ferry was into like hypnosis and shit. Like
Oh,
he was
yeah, I
into
know.
like, and also some weird occult shit. Because I guess when they looked into his like some of the searches, some of the sagas with him, that was during the time where the cops were fucking like actually doing surveillance. Like it's really the infamous story of him like they literally just like watched him for hours through his window pacing completely naked. That photo you saw earlier, that guy completely naked pacing, just chain smoking for hours, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for hours while they're like, you know, cops watching him from fucking the distance, like, because I can't remember what some drug-based fucking, you know, scheme I think is what it was. They were trying to bust him for that, and then both those guys end up, I think, losing their fucking career essentially. So,
Jesus.
if I recall correctly. So,
Well,
yeah,
I was just like, when I mentioned Henry Vincent earlier, the fact that he was involved with, if you remember the headlines where like midnight tours at of the White House, and he's taken like, I mean, Craig Spence was taking like straight up, you know, traumatized children in a pedophile network to tour the White House, you know, after hours. As you do. And if you come to find out,
if there's any way to impress a kid,
it's like the inverse of the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Right? What the fuck, man? You come to find out that Henry Vincent, like at least one of his properties that was rigged with audiovisual blackmail, like it was he disclosed to you know, Henry Vincent that he basically was blackmailing him. After one point he came over and he's sitting there like, wow, like he's really asking a lot of deep questions and wants to know a lot about me. And then as soon as he gets into the gay escort service stuff, he proceeds to go to the closet, opens it up, and then opens up a two-way mirror that opens up to another room, and he shows Henry Vincent this room. He's like, "Hey, come here," and then he walks in, and there's a camera on a tripod and like all these different monitors, and he basically tells him, this is when he discloses that he's blackmailing him. But this guy, all the while at his properties, Craig Spence was being protected 24 hours a day by Secret Service agents. And the way that this gay escort service was ever revealed and disclosed to the public was basically through this Secret Service sting operation that got him on the financial aspect of taking credit cards in this financial scam operation to cover for the escort service. But you get like the fact that he like Craig Spence isn't some random guy. He was like actually a Republican lobbyist, you know what I mean? And and was fairly prominent and had direct ties to the Bush administration at this time, clearly, because otherwise how is he taking tours after hours into the White House? But what I thought was at least interesting was that, like, when he showed him this closet with a two-way mirror, like, he basically was just proving that I think he even said to him, like, my business is blackmail, right? Like, that's his number one priority with running his, at least utilizing this guy's escort service for $20,000 a month. And him and Lawrence E. King were like pressuring him to provide children to this network as well. But yeah, honestly, man, like,
Well, I think it's the same for George Hunter White, where he was on Operation Midnight Climax, right? One of the very first MK Ultra sub projects, and that one was supposed to be what happens if we give people LSD. Will they give up important information? They will give it to military, see if they would divulge classified. They give it to normal people just to see if they could get them to lie or do things that were out of characteristic for them. And I think that really what happened though is that George Hunter White or the CIA in that process was like, oh, wait a minute, there's actual value here in just like recording this and now having these people in compromising situations. And like, I really feel that was kind of like an happy accident for the CIA, where originally they were just trying to do like document something and then realize, oh, this is something that we can really turn into something else. And just like Craig Spence wasn't a minor character, neither was Lawrence King. He sang at the Republican National Convention. He would hang out with Maureen Reagan. He was close to the Reagan family. Like, these were real big play. Alan Bayer. Like, no one ever looks into Alan Bayer. He was almost impossible to find a picture of.
Yeah. No,
hasn't Lawrence tried to get in like other fucking like kid organizations since he's been busted? Yeah. Like Nick Bryan always is like fucking following up like, hey, dude's a fucking pedophile. Like,
and Henry Vincent's network even provided escorts to William Casey at the time, director of the CIA at the time. And they were saying that he had he preferred children, right? Young boys. But I guess Henry Vincent refused on principle to supply children and was only supplying gay escorts to this service throughout the service. So William Casey's connection to Henry Vincent's escort service was he would get young men that were still of age, but they were as young as and then William Casey allegedly had erectile dysfunction and so, at least according to a lot of these escorts that told Henry Vincent this, and I guess he preferred like hot candle wax and like sort of some sadistic.
Took a slow grind to get him going.
Yeah, right. But and who helped cover up when all of this was being disclosed through some reports of the Washington Times which I found this to be insane, especially with all the research I've been doing into Watergate, was that this guy who worked for the Washington Post was running counter narratives to the Washington Times at this point, who was clearly disclosing, like at least attempting to honestly disclose a lot of Henry Vince's connections to Craig Spence and who Craig Spence actually was in many ways. And it was like damning reporting. And it turns out that this guy within the Washington Post who was running a lot of these counter articles claiming that this is like, sensationalism type of thing was this guy named Ben Bradley, who you can trace him all the way back to Operation Mockingbird when the head of the Washington Post was working directly with the CIA at the time throughout the 50s. And and I believe it was Donald Graham was the guy's name who was running the Post at this time during Mockingbird. And he is the one who employed Ben Bradlee at the Post. And
which is the Mooney owned newspaper, by the way.
Yeah. So he's flooding the Post with all these intelligence agents that are running Mockingbird operations and cover-up stories, providing all these narratives that would help, keep everyone in the dark publicly and provide some sort of plausible explanation to the public. And then, so it turns out that Bradlee not only was helping cover up the Henry Vincent gay escort scandal, he had originally been attributed with basically being the individual who was responsible for urging Woodward and Bernstein in their effort to help bring down the Nixon administration, right? So anyway, he's serving the same purpose like 20 years later, and so I don't know. It just seems like how many times can because those individuals were entirely implicated throughout Watergate as basically covering up a sexual blackmail operation that was happening. And, John Dean, and, he was allegedly trying to get all this dirt on political operatives, but ranging the spectrum, he had reached out to multiple sexual blackmail operations and prostitution networks and was accumulating lists of prominent politicians or whatever. And I guess one of them in upstate New York that he attempted to probe for a list of political, prominent politicians and celebrities or whatever the case was like 50% Republican. And so it didn't really help his cause. And so this is, I guess, a part of the narrative. But anyway, I just thought that it's absolutely crazy that the same guy covering up that gay escort service was directly tied back to helping aid in the cover up and facilitate the cover up at the Post with Woodward and Bernstein when it came to Watergate. So
yeah, well,
it never stops, dude.
I wanted to finish out before we get to the call-in portion. I did want to talk to Tommy about his about Oklahoma City bombing, because this is where me and him are kindred spirits. A little bit of a, just so you guys know, he has complete, a complete backbone essentially for a comic on the Oklahoma City bombing. I got a little bit of a preview and I was blown away because, I followed you a little bit. I always kind of associate you with like the occult, the what people consider like the kooky stuff. And I'm not saying that makes you kooky or whatever. I'm very much someone who does it. I don't take a side in this weird paradigm that people like to do. We have the researchers who get all upset at the kooky guys, and the kooky guys who get all upset at the researchers for being faggots about the kooky guys. And so it's like, I'm more of an in the middle guy where I'm like, I like to pull from both, and I'm not so full of myself that I'm like, oh, this person said this one thing that one time that then later got proved to be false, and so he's clearly the worst or whatever. Because I don't know, when you run like a variety show, sometimes you may not get everything right. We're fallible humans, whatever. But generally speaking, and you can't really know someone's heart, so don't make a big thing of it. But either way, my point was I was very surprised when I was like, holy shit! I was reading through it and I was like, this shit is fucking accurate. Don't get me wrong, I did. So I'm not saying I completely, for people out there, if this ever comes out, I'm not saying I buy every little thing that's in there, but I'm like, this is shit. I'm I'm recalling minor details from 302 reports and shit. I'm like, damn, this really went through the effort of being actually going, being sourced, essentially. I was very impressed, is my point. So I guess just kind of, I do kind of want to just give you a chance to talk about that, because I'm very much interested in what is your OKC thing, because there's so many different rabbit holes within OKC that you can go down, and it's very clear if people follow my show. Obviously, it was the Yeakey one that was mine. That very much is my main angle when I talk. That's my probably if I was to talk to people about it, that would be my intro. It's probably the one aspect that I know the best about too. But I feel like some people are different. Obviously Richard Booth, the guy I had on for my series, is his was John Doe too, and I get that. That's more if you have autism brain and you're I want to show you facts and numbers and be look, clearly shit is fucked. Like, whereas, like, you know, I'm more like, I don't know, I guess I have a little bit more of a heart. You know, Yeakey, like, tugs at my heartstrings, and it's like, it's very clear the dude didn't kill himself. So what is your, like, angle? I guess just kind of your read on you. Like, what is your main thing in OKC? Like, what drew you to it?
I'm split on two. The main one though is McVeigh himself.
Mm.
And the reason why it's McVeigh himself is because
It's a
first you've
complicated
got
character.
the lone wolf angle that is always a red flag in conspiracies. But set
Yeah.
aside the lone wolf thing because that's like the easy layup version. The other part is that my version of, I guess what you were saying, is of like 9/11, where you felt detached and you were like 8 years old and you see this happening. Mine was OKC, and I remember being in like American history class and them showing like this building. I'm just like, okay, yeah, there's a building that's falling down. Like I didn't, they weren't like zooming in and showing bodies or anything. So it was very surreal. It's like, why is everyone freaking out about this? It just looks like a construction project. And obviously I didn't realize the scope of but the other angle of that is that Timothy McVeigh was always painted as like a freaking bumpkin that lived out in the woods. He was almost like a Randy Weaver. He was one of these guys. He was a David Koresh. You know, he probably had a compound. He probably never used lights. He probably didn't wear sneakers or any of that. And then you start looking into it and you're like, wait a minute. This dude was like a computer programmer in the 80s, like before anyone was doing that stuff because it was, you know, profitable. Like he was just like straight. He loved X-Men comics. He loved Star Trek. As I'm reading through this, I was like, damn, dude, like this reminds me of me. Like I could have been this guy at some level. And he wasn't even a gun nut. He just bonded with his grandpa over shooting guns, and no one else that he knew, and family and friends. That was like the one thing that he had with his grandpa. And I guess that made him the extremist. That was the reason that he ended up joining the military, is one of the official stories, that he was so infatuated with guns. He was like, let me join the military where I'll get paid to do this kind of stuff. But then I follow that through. And then, man, the stories about how he went to the military and he hung out with his crew, and they had this like experimental program where you stay with the people that you go to boot camp with. Like they follow you to all the different other things that you get stationed to. It's a while. I couldn't even imagine how that would
They had
work
like
out.
an idea in the military at the time. I guess they were trying to group people together. I think that wasn't like necessarily specific to them. I think it was like a concept they said they were trying out. But it does make for some interesting stories, because then you do get sources that were like, yeah, I was with this guy throughout all of training. Like we were like at the hip. Like it's not like a lot of military where you just like, you go to your next spot and maybe you might have like one or two guys that do end up kind of going down a similar pipeline to you. But no, they very much were like, you guys are like joined at the hip. This is your group. So
Well, add a quarter to the coincidence bucket when it comes to McVeigh. That's just one of many, but the biggest one for me, and I think this one came from Aberrations in the Heartland of the Real book, which is like phenomenal on this topic.
It's like
But
the
the one with the freaking the steamrollers, or like the bulldozers, where they go out and there's like this entire battlefield with just dead bodies all over the place. And instead of cleaning them up, they just send in bulldozers and just plow sand on top of them. And I was like, that's not real. Like, come on. The book went a little too far. They jumped the shark. And then you start looking into it, and like, sure enough, there's news articles with photos and descriptions, but there's no actual image of any of that stuff that happened. And I mean, just remember that particular point, which is really hard to appeal to like a mass audience of normies. But to the concept of like, you can create mass genocide on a high scale, and as long as you make sure no one gets a picture of it, and you can just plow sand over it and be like, here, right here was the battle. It's the same thing as like bringing your kid to the Civil War battleground and be like, you know, tens of thousands of people died on this field, and they're like, yeah, that's cool, Grandpa. Like, when are we going to get back in the car and turn the AC on? It was the same concept. So that's mine. And then the other one was the transgender. I can't remember the name of all the characters.
Kevin Langan or Donna Langan, I think. Yeah,
and now Donna Langan, but
depending on if you respect their pronouns.
well, and Donna Langan is like a stalwart in the fight within like prison, like transgender prisoner rights, like
led by a bunch of lefties,
like a freaking pioneer. And that's so crazy. Like, dude, like just like David Ferry, like, right? Like how many different weird conspiracies is
And Langan's parents were spooks. Langan's parents were spooks.
Yeah.
Like he literally visually witnessed the burning of like the monks or whatever, like the one people think of all the time. Like he witnessed some of that.
Another Rage Against the Machine reference, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, dude, what the fuck? And it's like, it is weird when you start like really learning a lot of this lore and you realize, like, say Langan, parents fucking CIA, you know, and so it's like, what the fuck is going on there? You know, fucking McVeigh, he got visited by the feds, and when he was like back in those hacker days. So it's like, you always see, then obviously with Ferry, like we talked about Ferry earlier, it's like that motherfucker, the Civil Air Patrol, when like Oswald and like Barry Seal were like younger, like well before this shit like was popping off. So like, what the fuck? Like this is like, it's like it really hints towards some sort of generational or just scout early type thing, and I don't know if that corresponds to today's you know, wet works or whatever, but I mean, it seemed to be in the past at the very least. It's fucking weird, you know. Sorry.
So the book that I've been working on, it's still in like the script writing phase because it is massive. There's no way I can see it being told in less than about 8 different issues, which you kind of like saw. It can be broken down to 6, and that's a very abbreviated version. 8's the sweet spot, but at that point with 8, we're talking like 50 grand plus for the art production alone. So it right now it's kind of like locked behind like a whimsical dream where I hit the lottery or one of my other books just takes off so much that I can then afford to go all in, because I don't know how much the market in particular is demanding like a sympathetic Timothy McVeigh comic book. Although part of me is like, maybe I lean into the Donna Langdon. Maybe it becomes like a transgender anti-hero thing, and you don't find out until the very end, like, oh, this person was actually part of the bombing of the you know, Edward Murrow building. So
it is funny. You can take either way with that, and it's like either way. I don't know. Langan is such a funny character because it is like it makes the left so upset. Like when you bring it up, and you're like, I really just can't even point it out. Like, come on, can we at least admit this is fucking hilarious? Like, I don't know. That is where a lot of people get lost. Yeah, you can definitely take the hero thing because I don't know. I do think maybe there is. I would like to see people like more research into him or her or whatever the fuck you want to go with, because like there is. It's so weird. The fact that he had like CIA agents, if you look into like this past with like how he's interacted with Guthrie, I think Langan, I want to say, wasn't he an informant for the Secret Service for a period, or was that maybe that was Guthrie? It was one of the two. And then he just like seems like he just blew them off. Like it's just bizarre that like how connected all these people were with glowies, and you're like, dude, what the fuck is really going on here?
I would not be surprised if he had connections to the Secret Service because they're all over the place in all of these crazy scandals, like including the original plots to assassinate Kennedy in Chicago and Miami. I mean, that the first black Secret Service agent that was like directly appointed by Kennedy was like the only one who actually came out and exposed the Chicago plot. And if you ever, I don't recall his name, but if you ever look into that story, he was basically set up after he came out and publicly disclosed what he knew. He was set up by people within the Secret Service who then got him on a charge where it was basically this criminal who later on admitted he perjured himself on behalf of the prosecution in order to get this Secret Service agent convicted and then sent to prison. And when he's in prison, they put him in solitary and they basically torture this guy and forcefully drug him. Like, his story is nuts. But when I looked into that, it made me realize what the Secret Service is really about in a lot of ways. And then, like I said, they were providing protection for Craig Spence. But yeah, by the way, I might say that the first pronouns that I'm willing to respect, I've been inspired recently by a petition that has to do with Sam. Yeah.
It started as a joke, and now it's like actually catching a little bit of traction.
Such a contrived controversy.
It's
Like,
hilarious.
so,
Dude.
like it's an A. Like it's like I don't know. I mean, everyone knows the Tower Gang, so it's like I've said hard R many a times, but like I don't even understand how like in a modern context someone can make that like I don't know pretty like vanilla of a joke. It's not even really that dark and like my nigga, like it's a soft A. Like it's like clearly the
So
joke
funny.
is that like fucking like oh we're playing pretend here. I'm clearly not a black dude. Like it's just like okay, you may not agree with it, but like you can't understand the concept. I don't know. It's just silly. It's all contrived.
Well, being upset is the joke. Like the joke
Yes.
doesn't exist without the person that gets upset at the joke, and then they become the person you're laughing at. And it's so crazy to see people just like walk right into it and then get upset. I kind of like that's why I like the joke. It's like such an easy layup joke that people like they expose themselves by getting mad about it.
Yes, people don't get it. Like you're what makes this funny. Like,
Yeah,
so
yeah, you're
like
the
that's
joke.
like
You
that's
are the
what
joke, the person that's mad.
that's like sort of how Tower Gang started. Like that was the type of humor, the stuff that we find funny because it makes people upset, but we also do find a little bit of funny in it. It is organic on its own, but like there also is this like side component of like if people get upset, this will just make it even that much more funny. Like it's like I don't know, like we make jokes about Jews, blacks, whatever, and it's like yeah, like okay, like we find this funny. I'm sorry you to have a fucking vanilla sense of humor. I don't know what to tell you. Like, and if you don't like it, then just be upset. I don't fucking know. Like, I don't know. It's we're getting past the point of like where cancel culture is even effective though, so that's why it's made it even more funny because it's just people crying, so, well, all right, we need to get into the call-in portion of this. Let's do my quick ad read. Let you guys know about Nadeau Shave Co. You guys see my I got rid of the beard. Using NWJShaveCo.com. Went there. Got some of their razors. It's $75 for a year, guys. I'm telling you though, I've had these for months now, and I've only gone through like a couple razors. I mean, I don't shave that frequently, but dude, you can make these last for forever. I mean, you guys think about how much you spend on the plastic shit. Just fucking, I'm telling you, this is great shave, single blade razor, smooth shave, feel like you fucking baby's butt after. But yeah, guys, let's get into the call-ins. Let me see if I take this off. Oops, shit, I'm retarded. All right, guys, let me bring up the banner. Oh, what the fuck? We just lost Austin. Well, that's bizarre. I'm sure he'll be back in a second. All right, guys, the call-in number is 941-281-5857. We'll be going through the comments too as well, and then for the patrons, if you guys want to join via StreamYard, you're welcome to. I also sent it. Oh wait, never mind. Let's start off with my buddy Ken in the chat. Without the experimental unit, there would be no OKC bombing. I'm assuming
Agreed.
he's meaning the. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
like,
it wouldn't have happened on the same day by the same people. Like that, the plan might have still been in action, but it wouldn't have been McVeigh and his homies.
Explain though, because when we say experimental unit, we're talking about like that group, the buddy system they had or whatever.
Correct. Where they all share the same programming and the bond that they form and the trauma that they go through, which I would argue a lot of that like trauma-based programming, but the fact that they went through that made it so that McVeigh could then call back in and go back and like, because they had split up. He became like a meth head in Phoenix. Like they went on their different paths and then reunited
so you're getting
years
at
later
when they split up, because later on the military did kind of split them up. So you're kind of applying to that there was almost like a split, like it just kind of.
Well, post military, they took their own directions. I think McVeigh started. He went to like Florida and he starts going to like gun shows and giving out issues of like the Turner Diaries to people and selling like patches.
So then that's when people think he got sheep dipped, obviously before that. So I guess I'm just trying in my head go, how much importance do I really put on the unit that he was with there? Because I don't think, from my recollection, I'm a little bit rusty. I believe he was the only one who had like the weird shit, like all the dentist appointments and stuff. So it seems like if there was some more sinister shit going on at that time, that was just exclusive to him as opposed to the other guys. So I guess I don't know. I don't know how much import to put on the unit.
I guess my understanding was that Preston Nichols was the explosives expert. So without him and his specialty, McVeigh would have had like the intent, but maybe not the willpower or like the can do. He had the willpower, but he didn't have the technical knowledge. Whereas Preston, he maybe didn't have the willpower to go through it. He was just a meth head, but he had the technical knowledge. So again, like without that experimental unit tying these two people together in such a specific way, it wouldn't have turned out the same way that it did.
Yeah.
Like PatCon still existed regardless of McVeigh, so PatCon might have still pushed this forward. Elohim City probably still would have existed as an intelligence kind of weird like sea monkey organization, right? Like where they created it and then like watched it turn into something weird. So all that still existed. So OKC probably still would have happened because again it was attempted way before McVeigh pulled the trigger on like the real one, right?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, 1 second. There we go. Whoa, we got a completely different layout. All right, I got Langan was a Secret Service informant because Guthrie was threatening to kill Bush and Clinton. Yeah, I recall that, and I believe he then just kind of like deuced out on the Secret Service. Kind of like, I don't know.
As
I think
you do.
he somehow.
Yeah.
I think he's the way it sounds like. I believe he used the Secret Service to get him out of some other legal trouble, and then just kind of ghosted him. Is what it seems like, which is. I mean, if that's the case, it's pretty kind of fucking dope, to be honest. But
like Operation Snow White. Like I might hate you, but you did something pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, well, like for real. I mean, like it's like if Guthrie was doing wild shit and he was just homie, he was just like, hey, and he was in legal trouble, like, oh, I'll snitch on him, and like, fuck you, no, I'm not. Pretty dope. But yeah, I mean, Guthrie is another character. Like, I don't really know what part he plays in the story. It's really hard to get a read on him if he was just some sort of true believer, some sort of, sheep something or other as well. I don't fucking know. He is like a question mark. But at the very least, he ended up meeting a weird fate, just like Trinidad, who looked very much like him. So it's like, at the very least, it seems he knew some shit, So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
And I don't know if this was true or not, because man, I can't trust anything anymore. But there was a photo of O.J. Simpson next to Trinidad, and apparently they were like on the same. Was that a meme or was that a real photo? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Ken, I think, was who shared it. It was either Ken or Richard that shared it. And Ken's was in the chat right now. But yeah, no. I guess they went to the same.
That's wild,
college.
bro. That's
right?
Can you guys hear me?
Is
Is my audio fixed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
Okay,
hear you.
good. Word. All right. Well, it's hilarious that you bring that up because OJ seems to be connected to everything. Because another hilarious connection, a little more direct than what I mentioned earlier, as far as like the tenuous connection with that media personality at the time, but is I believe Elizabeth Loftus, who was on the board of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. One of the cases where she was considered the expert witness or the memory expert on behalf of the defense was in the OJ trial. I believe it was because she was an expert witness on the behalf of the defense for McMartin, I believe Ted Bundy, and one of them was OJ Simpson, and then the officers involved in the beating of Rodney King, Oliver North, Michael Jackson, the Menendez brothers, Tim McVeigh and Terry Nichols, Harvey Weinstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell.
It's like the worst version of Pokemon ever.
I mean, and she's sitting on the board of the FMSF with Jolly West, with Dr. Jolly, with, key operatives in MK Ultra like Ralph Underwager, and I think Martin T. Orn was also on the board. But yeah, that goes deep. The fact that she was literally involved in the trials, or at least with Tim McVeigh and Terry Nichols, I found just pretty extraordinary, because her entire role is just to cast doubt in the public mind and basically influence the jury, and it's just, I'm never surprised anymore, But
I'm glad you said Terry. I also said Preston Nichols, thinking Montauk Project, but yeah, Terry Nichols.
Right. My God, Montauk. Stranger Things. Just realized I was muted. Yeah, there's the photo right there. Fucking, I'm guessing that might be Trinidad's right, because I mean, I haven't seen many photos of young Trinidad, so it's kind of hard to, really match that up. But that does kind of look like him. I guess a younger version of him.
Every day I feel more and more open to simulation theory with like all these weird like David Ferry and OJ Simpson connections, man.
Yeah, like,
pinnacles of it's like I mean, you just trace back. This is why I get along with the flat Earth people more than it's basically because I think NASA is a joke. And you look at the founders of NASA, right? And I mean, I'm going to have to do an episode on uh Jack Parsons, like, I mean, that's just so ridiculous that he was one of the fathers of modern rocketry, and he's clearly like beyond being a Marxist. Like, the guy converted to the OTO, like was running the American chapter, and, like, loved Aleister Crowley, but yeah, their connections are crazy because when you find out that, like, he was first married to his first wife, he ended up cheating on with her, like, underage sister that was like 17 at the time. And then even the head of Scientology, what's his name? I always forget. L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah. He's like best friends with this dude, lives in his lodge in lives in Pasadena, and then ends up fucking his wife and attempting to, like, they were really trying to, like,
wasn't Hubbard
bring in
like helping the Nazis out, like, to get, like, the after the shit fell or whatever?
L. Ron Hubbard?
Yeah, I believe that's like a rumor.
The Sea Org or something?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Sorry, didn't mean to throw you off, but go on.
No, you could. I wouldn't be surprised at all, man, because they had some insane connections. And when you find out that they, like, and I think Jack Parsons' body was even, like, stolen in some, like, sort of independent op to, like, grab his body and go take it out to the desert and put it on a funeral pyre and, like, have some sort of ritual burning of his body. But yeah, they were, like, trying to usher in the Aeon of Horus, and, like, were committing, like I believe even there's a story of L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons jerking off masturbating onto tablets and, like, trying to do this sex ritual to bring back, like, this occult goddess, this deity within
the Moonchild. They were
Yeah.
recreating the Moonchild ritual that Aleister Crowley writes about in his novel Moonchild.
This is your beat. Explain this to me, because why the fuck?
All right, real quick, guys, we have a call.
Okay.
So you put a pin in it. Let's remember where you were at. We have a call.
Yeah, we can go on
I'm
that.
going to go and play him now. Keep in mind, caller, the people, I have Austin with me, and I have Tommy of Paranoid American. They can hear you, but you can't hear them. So I guess whatever your question is, whatever you want to bring up, now's your time. So what's up, listener? Hello, you there? Hello? Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, all right. You're on Already Dead with Austin and Jose, and then our guest, Paranoid American. I'm just, whatever your question is, keep in mind, Austin and Tommy can hear you, but you can't hear them, so just whatever you got. Now's your time. You guys can hear him, right?
No, we can't hear anything.
No,
you guys can't hear him?
Nope.
Mm-mm.
What the fuck? Oh, I'm retarded. Oh, so real quick. Oh, shit.
There we go.
I fucked up. Oh, there we go. Now go again. All right, sorry. I fucked up on my end. All right, go ahead.
You're good.
All right.
My name's Shane. Austin will know me for sure. I'm literally just calling in to say you guys are killing it, but I do want to hear more about the NASA thing.
NASA thing. What about it? There's a lot of tangents we can go there.
I want to hear more about the NASA conspiracies for sure.
Any specifically? Because we can go to, like, Nazi route. We can go moon landings fake. Like, there's a lot of different ways to go with that.
Anything you guys want to talk about, I just want to listen to more of it.
Okay, I guess we'll let Tommy lead this off. You let us know what, I guess, the craziest shit you find about, what craziest conspiracy you find compelling or likely to be real, or whatever angle you want on that end. Thanks, caller.
I'll throw out that I've actually got a comic that's been like 5 years in the making, and it's coming out this year in May, I think, or June. In June, I think, when I release it. It's at nasacomic.com until they assist me on that. But nasacomic.com stands for Never a Straight Answer. But the whole comic, it basically picks apart every different little conspiracy theory that was going on around the fake moon landings and Stanley Kubrick, and it almost states all of the conspiracy as matter of fact, and then the whole rest of the comic is just focused on like the mundane, like office, like, you know, trying to work for Stanley Kubrick, and like he wants his coffee and then he wants his, you know, his tea or whatever. That's kind of where it all goes. But my favorite aspect of the moon landing is to tell people that the footage was, or this is how I kind of feel maybe, is the footage was faked, but that there is a chance that a human being might have set foot on the actual moon, but that we have no footage of it. And it would have been so disappointing for America to come out and say, yeah, this is it right here. For America to come out and say, you know, we've been to the moon, but just trust us. You know, like our girlfriend from Canada that you can't meet, she was also there. She saw it all, but you guys will never be able to like get the proof of it. Like we couldn't do that. And then the whole premise of this NASA comic was the idea that the NASA hears that the Russians are going to be staging a fake moon landing, and the CIA gets a big bug up their ass and like, well, they're not going to stage a fake moon landing before we can stage a fake moon landing. So then it actually becomes like a fake space race. They both know about it.
Like the men who stare at goats in a way. That's kind of hilarious.
So I think that the footage was faked. There's a chance that maybe we win, although I lose more and more faith in that almost every day. But man, the erasure of the tapes, the fact that you can just speed it up. There's a scene in that comic where Stanley Kubrick is describing how, you know, oh, we're just gonna, you know, like we'll speed the footage up or we'll slow the footage down so then it looks like more moon-like. And you know, one of the guys is like, couldn't someone just speed the tape back up and they could see it playing at regular speed and they would put two and two together? And he's like, look at this room full of equipment. Do you think someone in the future is going to have this room full of equipment to be able to just play tape speeds at any, and where are they even going to get the tape from? It's going to be a live broadcast. No one's going to record this. So like that whole premise of like just the pure hubris of like thinking that no one's ever going to be able to pull the wool off their own eyes again kind of becomes the joke.
Right.
All right, guys, we have another caller. We'll move it from NASA. I know we had someone in the chat that wanted us to go back to Satanism. We'll get back around. Let's keep calling. We'll keep jumping around topics. I'm fine with that. All right, caller, you're on with Jose, Austin, and our guest Tommy of the Paranoid American. What's your question?
Hey, y'all are killing it. Man, I think it was last week, y'all brought up the protocols. It's kind of a touchy subject. I got sober 3 years ago, and I had to go to rehab and everything. It was like whenever I drink and do cocaine, I cause problems. So while I was in rehab, they take our phones. You can't watch TV or anything. So I'm like shut out from everything, which was kind of a fucking relief. But while I was in there, I find these 3 books, and they said, "Hey, if you get those, but don't tell nobody, you got them. They're like banned books." And I was like, "Huh," and that just made me want to read them even more. So the first one I read was Industrial Society and Its Future, and I was like, "Holy fucking shit, I love this." And then the next one I read was the Learned Elders of the Protocols, and oh my God, it fucked me up. It was like for me, for my sober mind, you know, I don't know. I did spend all these years smoking weed and partying and shit, and like I never paid attention to any of that, and it was like, holy fuck, all this shit's happening now. And then Henry Ford was bitching about it way back then, that it was happening then. And it's like, it's hard to deny.
All the noses coalesced at once. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, man, it was just, and then whenever Austin brought it up last time, I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, because nobody brings it up, because it's, I've tried to tell people about it since I've been home, since I've gotten sober, and they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of that, but That's some crazy shit. Yeah, but dude, look at it.
Yep.
I feel you. Do you have a question there, or do you just want us to talk about the Elders of Zion, or basically just talk about the evil Jew sect stuff?
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I was just saying, you know, whenever it came up, I was like, damn, hell yeah, they. Because you know, it's sometimes I read that and I'm like, am I the only crazy motherfucker that read this? You know, they're like, no, that shit's everywhere.
I haven't read
People
that.
just don't bring it up.
But Robert Sepper's like coverage of like the Sabbateans and stuff does make you start to ask a lot of the same questions. But anyways, is that all you got? I mean, I appreciate you calling in. It's nice to hear from you.
Yeah. That's all I got. Yeah, y'all fucking keep up the good work. Y'all are doing a good job.
Hell yeah, man. Appreciate it. This was a dope call. Yeah, I guess
I got some interesting notes on the protocols,
all right,
man.
thanks,
Let's go.
All right, let's go.
Well, hopefully you haven't heard some of this. So one of them is that
Adam.
Yeah, come on.
That wasn't us. That was him. That was the producer, guys. Don't cancel us.
This is actually a good point, though, is that the protocols have almost been turned into a thing you're not allowed to talk about, just like you can't question certain numerical values. And the reason is because I think there's some truth to it. But my truth, I don't think that it was necessarily like the Jews. I think that the very likely origin of the protocols of the Elders of Zion was probably the Bavarian Illuminati that then kind of like changes hands into Mazzini and his Carbonari. And this is not the Leo Taxel Albert Pike connection. This is its own thing where you've got these people that control society. So they're not being prophetic. They're laying out like the game plan. And when the Bavarian Illuminati falls in late 1700s, they kind of get it reabsorbed back into Freemasonry. But in particular, they get reabsorbed in the French Freemasonry and a very specific sect of French Freemasonry that consider themselves like the ancient Egyptians of Freemasonry, which was the rite of Memphis and Mizraim. This is the one that goes up to like 99 degrees. And this particular subsect of a subsect of a subsect of Freemasonry, and what I will say French Freemasonry is like way different than American or British Freemasonry. They're the ones that actually had the protocols, and it was a compilation of things that had been building up since the late 1700s. And then at some point, a Russian, I believe, gets a hold of the protocols. They rewrite it to mean the Jews, and then it turns into anti-Jewish propaganda. But through that process, they're able to make it so if you mention the protocols, now you're being anti-Semitic, even if it has nothing to do with the anti-Semitism. And another really two more interesting notes on this. One is that Will Eisner of Disney fame, but also, comic book fame. He wrote The Spirit, and I think comic book awards are the Eisner Awards. So if you get like really high credits in the comic book world, Eisner, one of the last things that he put out was the protocols, which is like an illustrated tale of how the Dulles brothers found the protocols when they were overseas, and then bring back the protocol, and then they're the ones that debunk it. They're the ones that say like, "Oh, this is all BS."
Yep.
And this is where the Dulles gets all their original political capital, is through them being the ones that discount the protocols. So the whole origin of the CIA comes from the protocols.
Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, if you
can check those receipts, that's all like fully verified. None of that secret.
It's perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, it really is just like at the end of the day, it's a group that's following certain methodology. And I don't like even if you do take the Jew route, which I can kind of sort of make that case. It's like it's not really like when we say Jews, it's like it's not we're saying like if you're fucking, Goldstein down the street has any fucking idea. It's more just this is an entity that's infiltrated different religions and whatever, whether you want to call it Jews, like, I mean, whatever, it's infiltrated other things, and there are sects that seem to conform to that in the past, but it's like, at the end of the day, it's just some group that's infiltrating other groups and with a certain specific methodology, and they seem to spread it, whether that becomes that or it becomes neuro-linguistic programming, or it becomes whatever. It's kind of the same basic structure, no matter where you're seeing it in a certain sense. So, I don't know. I think it's like lowbrow in a certain sense, be like Jews.
Yeah.
Although it's fun to go Jews.
It is.
That's my personal take, but yeah, I don't know. All right, what else we got? Let's get back into the chat. Langan was in jail and said he'd declare war on the government if he ever got out. An informant in jail reported that, and the Secret Service let him out anyways. Yeah, that totally checks out.
Yeah, that's his role, of course.
Yeah.
Put it back in the game.
All right. If Fire Pixie, appreciate you showing up, Fire Pixie. See you in here a lot. Do you think there are other bombs involved, or just the Ryder truck that did all that damage?
Oh, absolutely. That was probably one of the first uses of thermite, and there was a Air Force general that ended up putting out his entire like independent review on this because he was like, "This is so obviously not the real story. Here, let me prove it to you." And then he kind of gets laughed out of the same way like all the architects for 9/11. They're like, "Oh, you guys aren't real architects." I watched a couple of YouTube videos in my day, my friend. I think I know about as much as you do.
Yeah. I mean, I will admit when it comes to that, I definitely lean far more to there being bombs in the building type deal, or some other thing other than just a fucking.
Well, the movie Armageddon is my favorite example. Like, what's the whole premise of Armageddon is you can't explode a bomb on the surface of an asteroid. It just takes a tiny little chunk out, and that's it. You got to drill into the center and blow it up from the middle, and that's the only way you can cause catastrophic damage. Just apply that to OKC.
Yeah, exactly. So I will say, like, when I do talk about this, I try to be clear. I'm like, I don't have solid evidence that like I do, but just my pattern recognition is off the charts, and I'm seeing a lot of stuff that's corresponding to there was other shit. Like, I mean, sure, I guess I can't show you specific pictures or whatever would have it hold up in court or something, but like I don't know, there are a lot of arrows.
If Langdon applied the thermite, now you can't mention that because then that would be like prejudice. Like that would be hate speech to imply that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it was that General Pardon was the one who came up with that report. Yeah. And
I mean, there are other ones, but that was like the biggest name. Yeah,
that was compelling as hell to me. Like it basically convinced me that clearly there was asymmetrical damage to the federal building. And I just thought when you read his report, it's not even a debate. Like I really don't like. I guess maybe there are other expert opinions.
Was he just bored? He was just like, you know what? I've got so much free time. I'm just gonna put together this entire ballistics and explosive report. Like, and it wasn't like he also had a book about aliens and like interdimensional travel. Like, he just put this one book out because he was like, this is so obviously false.
Yeah, I mean, he was the commander of the Air Force Armament Technology Laboratory and had a collective 25 years of design and testing experience handling explosives and ballistic weapons. And
what are your thoughts on people that dismiss him as just like because I've had people like really push back and be like, oh, he's just some crazy kook.
Right. Well,
like,
appeal to authority, right?
Yeah, it's like, to me, it's like, I don't know, because it's always like, oh, he spoke at these crazy rallies, or he has these crazy ideas about the New World Order, or like stuff. I don't even know what his specific takes are. Maybe I would be like, yeah, that's a little off. But like, it's like I feel like these are separate things. Like, I mean, maybe you could say that in your head sets off some alarms that he's some sort of fucking glowy. But like, I don't fucking know. Like, is his bombing analysis like correct? That's what I like. And like, I feel like that's like obfuscating the point. Like, because even if he was a glowy, sometimes they'll put out real information but shitcode it with someone that says kooky stuff or something, and because then that way they can whatever. So like, maybe they're releasing true information. What I want to know is like, is that information correct? Like, and I don't know. Like, it seems when I look the little bit I've looked into it, and with no fucking bombing expertise whatsoever, I'm like, I don't know. At the end of the day, that seems like a lot. From some of the other I've seen other explosions, seen like with Anfo, and it just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to match up to what my fucking layman's view of like how that would work. And then you look at the fucking the bombing pattern clearly being like the other column, so it's like it kind of looks like it was more than just that. I don't know.
You know what? There's not a lot of profit in putting out a report that disproves an official story in a way that like every major news media outlet will not just try and blackball you out of existence, but you might be putting your life in very real jeopardy if you've got some kind of very conclusive proof that disproves this level of information. Like,
Yeah.
for example, maybe you could put together like a computer simulation game or whatever, but then people are going to pick apart the physics of it until you can explain. And again, it goes back to Gustav Le Bon in the crowd, right? If there's some bumpkin in the crowd that's just like, I believe the official story and you can't convince me otherwise, like there's no amount of discussion that can sway that person. And if they get any sort of momentum, then like we see it every day. You see actual like studies, and then the final thing is just always, well, that study, that's an appeal to authority. Like who did that? So what are you going to audit like every single person that's ever? It becomes this an infinite, like cascade of evidence that you can never provide.
Which makes me think. I think this ties into the conversation here. Like, what are your thoughts about Riconosciuto? Like Michael Riconosciuto, whatever the fuck, however you say his last name. He's the guy who he was kind of got more popular recently because there was a whole octopus conspiracy, and he was tied into that. He was, one of the guy feeding Michael Castellaro, I think is
Danny Castellaro.
Oh, Danny Castellaro, whatever the fuck. He was feeding him information. But apparently he played a role in the OKC bombing as well, in that I don't remember the specifics in this, but somehow he was doing a similar thing where he was feeding information about, I believe he was the mini nuke theory was his thing, or some other fucking weird experimental bomb. And it was like kind of like outlandish. And like, don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm open to the idea. I don't know if you prove it out, but it was one of those things that sounds so fantastical. And he seems to have a history of, he just seems like he's like a disinfo agent, and like the kind of guy that like would feed you some true information, some false stuff, just to send you spiraling. Like that seems like what he was doing with Danny almost. And it seems maybe here as well, but it doesn't necessarily have bearing on truth or not. But then later, Rick Sharrow is the one who kind of really like put the arrow in the heart, at least PR wise, of the other options other than the truck bomb. He wrote this like bombs. I can't remember the name of the article, but essentially like slapping down other bombing theories. But what he did was he focused on like the absurd ones that no one really was taking seriously, like mini nukes or some other experimental weird thing they were doing. And then just kind of then, kind of out of hand, dismissed the actual substantial stuff. And so it makes it look like he's doing this whole slam dunk on these conspiracy theorists, when really all he really did was like slap down the ones that no one was really seriously considering anyways. You know what I mean? Like, and so like, I guess just kind of like your thoughts on that. I don't know, maybe that's too deep cut. Like if Riconosciuto and like Sharrow's article doesn't ring a bell to you, but that was like,
it doesn't wholly, but I would say that one of the things that stands out to me which makes me lean more towards conspiracy being credible, is that as soon as this happened, right, they start shipping out the wreckage to China, the same exact thing that they do in 9/11. And for some kind of a huge national tragedy of this magnitude, where it's like this, collective trauma that we're all programmed by, classes stop, flags go to half mast, all that happens. Why would you start shipping all the forensic evidence out of the country to be melted down in a foreign country where like it's no longer accessible? It's wild to me. And that one, it's put like a $50 bill into the coincidence conspiracy jar at that point.
Yeah, which, I mean, I've heard some semi-compelling cases for like the mini nuke theory and stuff. Like it was like a little backpack thing they had set up that it was more of like a little tiny thing. I forget the specifics and the science of it, but it is like, and then there's also, I've seen somewhere, I forget the source, that there was theories that maybe one of the things Terry could have had was readings from like a radiation thing, because I know that plays some part where they wouldn't let people actually do that. And, someone like a Terry, maybe he would have some sort of access. I don't know the legitimacy of that. I mean, maybe one day, Tonia would tell me something. I don't fucking know. Either way, that could be a thing. I guess I'm just rambling. The idea that, like, I don't know. I mean, if you really look at the crazy things that happen in the world, is it really that crazy? Like that they would do that and then have some like what seems to be a disinfo agent actually reveal the method, say what they did, and then they slap it down like it's crazy because they knew it was so absurd that no one would buy it. They literally flaunt it in your face and then have some other spook come in and fucking slap it down and be like, you silly fucking conspiracy theorists. You know what I mean? Like, I just like, that's like almost poetic, like them fucking us.
I mean, is that any more or less believable than like an international, sex ring?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because, but I don't know. Anyway, I guess let's go back to the chat, see what else we have here. Yeah, someone said, I bet that's what Yeakey had info on. Yeah, you're what made me think about that. Because I think I saw Tonia post something or alluding to maybe some credibility. I don't know. I'm going to have to talk to her later. She keeps alluding to wanting to talk to me again. So it may end up doing another episode with her at some point. It sounds like she has some more info. So, and she's always welcome.
Yeah, I saw that too. But I know that I've read like a few different reports that said that I'm trying to remember exactly how legitimate and credible I viewed them at the time, but I for sure remember walking away from it thinking that potentially Yeakey had seen undetonated charges underneath the daycare because
Guys,
there
we
were
have
reports.
Tonia calling in right now. Give me a second.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. A second. You guys keep talking.
No, my only theory was that basically the crime scene was about to go into federal jurisdiction, and so Terry was still injured from everything that had occurred and was feeling pressure to get back down there for some reason in order to I don't know, get evidence of something. And so there are all these implications and theories that I've read about what exactly he was going back to the site to actually find, right? Or
Real quick,
get
guys,
some.
we have Tonia on the line. I have her set up. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just awkward with this setup. I haven't even figured a better setup for this. But yeah, we have Tonia. Tonia, bear in mind with the setup I have going on, I need to figure out a better way to do it. Me and you can talk back and forth. The guests can hear you. Well, my co-host and the guests, they can hear you, and but they can't talk back to you. So, but hey, Tonia, how you doing? Tonia? Did I lose you? All right. Tonia?
I heard audio.
I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you fine. Hey, Tonia, how you doing?
You can?
Yeah, I can hear you. Tonia? Hello? I don't know, maybe we're running.
By the way, I want the sunglasses from our paranoid guy. I need a pair of those.
All right. Well, maybe I don't know if that's merch of his or not. He sells a lot of merch. I'm sure
I should get some. I've had multiple requests.
I'm sure she'd be honored to get a pair. But hey, Tonia, how you doing? What'd you call in for? What you got in your mind?
Bet you have.
Hello, Tonia. Are you watching the stream and trying to interact that way? I think that might be the issue.
It might be. I
can think of. So I think we're dealing with a delay there.
No worries.
I'll quit doing that.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to interact with just me because, like I said, they can't, and it's not gonna be a perfect lineup. But yeah, what you got on your mind, Tonia? Hey, Tonia, I don't know if it'd help, but I can send you the StreamYard link.
That would be cool.
That's okay. I'll just talk for a minute.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So the thing I was alluding to has to do with some of the medical issues that bombing survivors were experiencing when they went to the hospital to get care.
Okay.
And
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to go in the other room so I don't mess up here with the playback here.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah. So anyway, someone had mentioned or asked me a question about the group at Ramona's that referred to themselves as a Baker Street Irregulars. And there was someone there whose husband actually survived the bomb blast. He was taken to the hospital and he was expected to live. They told his wife to go on home, go shower, they'd take care of everything, go get some rest, and then come back. When she came back, he was gone. He was dead. And they did not want to show her the body. Without getting into too many details, because I don't think that this story has been written anywhere, but anyone who was part of that group, and there are some that still exist. I don't want to name names because a few of them are still out there. And I don't want to put anybody in a bad position. But this particular woman approached me, wanted to talk to me because most people regarded me as very either unbelievable or just crazy that I would talk about the harassment that I was receiving. But she was one that wanted to talk to me because apparently she went through a series of similar harassment that I did. And that was due to the fact that her husband's body shriveled up like radiation, not anything like what you'd expect from an actual bomb of what they imply was used in the bombing. And after that, because they wanted her to cremate immediately, which is very similar to the Trinidad story. Mm-hmm. She did not want to, and that's why they had to show her the body. And after that, harassment, very similar to some of what I talked about, the very early on harassment that I had. And we can get into that on another time, but that she could identify. And so she very much wanted to talk to me. She was one of the few there at the group that wanted to talk to me. I think I was very scary otherwise to a lot of the other ones that maybe they lost loved ones and they were no longer there and they weren't sure they wanted a part of anything that didn't go with the official story. But because she herself had received similar harassment, and I want to say she was twice my age at the time. So she was an older woman. And she very sweetly said she wanted to help me, wanted to help me with a court case if I wanted to take things to court because she had heard of some of the difficulty and background I was having with the court system as well as family members. And that's another story altogether. But I told her I did not want her to do that. She was a very sweet woman. I was glad that she was left okay after her husband's death, but it was quickly showing that there was no way for me to get anything done within the court system. By that time, I had already gotten the kind of warnings about that the person who gave one of the warnings, how he wouldn't even go into it if his own mother were lying in the grave. By that time, I was getting connected with Ted Gunderson and some of the others and getting a fuller idea of the background. And so the last thing I wanted to do was ask anybody to take risks like that. Mm-hmm. But later on, as the story unfolded about the radiation and what was found on Terry's computer, that began to make sense. And so I kind of attribute some of that also to how they did not want Terry to go to the hospital right after he was down there at the bomb site. Mm-hmm. I believe that was for more than one reason. But for all I know, it could have also been connected to potential radiation. And so I find that a little bit odd, something that is worth investigating. Yeah. But it certainly may explain, or at least get us in the right direction of why someone might have been looking at radiation and not so much at the multiple bomb blasts anymore, which is what Parton had picked up on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, Tonia. If you have anything else to say, feel free to. But yeah, we'll definitely have to maybe get you on here sometime or do a normal episode of No Way Jose. But yeah, you're always welcome on the show. But yeah, if you have anything else to say, feel free.
Yeah, that'll be fine. I basically just try to answer some questions as they come out from here and there, if I can be helpful in any way. But that's not something that I've discussed with too many people, simply because, of the concerns at the time and not quite knowing where all the pieces fit. But they're starting to become clearer over time. Yep. So
100%. Hopefully we can get the story out more. But I appreciate your time, Tonia. Appreciate knowing you. Yeah, we're gonna let you go. You always have an open door policy on this show, and
Of
with
course.
that, we'll let you go. Hope you have a good night.
All right, you too.
All right, bye.
I just want to say I'm humbled that Tonia even mentioned my glasses and taught like that's bucket list material.
right.
So thank you so much for calling in,
welcome.
Tonia. And she mentioned Ted Gunderson, and then that sparked a memory that I remember that the version of his book, I can't remember the full name of it, like Satanic Abuse in Nebraska or something. That book that I got, it came with like a hand like a signed, like typed out insert, and that insert was talking about how they shipped the OKC materials out of the country, and what she just mentioned about maybe radiation being detected. That, I mean, it fits into that particular story so well. Like, why would you want to get the stuff out of the country as soon as possible? Well, that's one reason, because it would be real obvious if they could detect radiation where it shouldn't be, right?
100%.
I mean, I don't know. It's just still such a, like, even to me, you're like, what? No way. Like, I don't know. It is just hard to buy it, but I don't know. I don't know. Like, I mean, if that's what the evidence bears out later, I'm open to all eventual. Like,
here's a little bit of like reasonable logic for the unreasonable, where you're like, I don't know, man, that's too much. Think about it. The same thing with like David Ferry being like this consistent theme. What they do is that if they're gonna do something, they're gonna pop off and make some kind of like national tragedy. Why not use that to experiment with some other crap? I mean, like they're throwing stuff at the wall for so much
absurd
of this.
that it's unbelievable. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's just kind of like when we go over to the World War II camps, right? And they're like, wow, these guys were doing some crazy stuff. And then someone was like, what if we throw a little more fuel on this fire? Like, before we clean it up, let's see this out, like the ultimate sunken cost fallacy. And I feel like that's kind of like a perpetual sunken cost. Like, well, if we're going to take out this building, why not test out the hologram tech? Oh, why not, throw HARP at it too? Just do it all.
It's just also so absurd that you're like, I mean, to even come to buy onto one of those is insane, but to buy on both, you're like, so it is like this idea, because like, can you imagine explaining to people, like explaining David Ferry to people today sounds insane. He's such an absurd character. But like, can you imagine like right after JFK, if somehow this knowledge was like for people who had their like nose, like their ear to the ground, could like have this if they were, which I think Garrison was, I think, looking into him at the time. So it kind of was. Can you imagine being that person that was aware of that knowledge at that time, saying that shit, and how insane you fucking probably sounded?
You have no photos, you don't have video, you don't have the internet to like, oh, just look it up on your phone right now, right? It's all just trust me, bro, is the source. And you're like, you're talking about the guy with the shoe polish for the eyebrows. Come on, man! Like that.
Oh, you're telling me he's fucking a bunch of kids and they're all turning out to be like crazy super spooks? Like, oh, okay.
Oh, Dude, the internet messed it up for so many people that it was so easy to like transfer this info, and like if you didn't know who a guy was, you're not gonna like hear it through the pipeline. But now it just takes one internet article, and now all of a sudden someone's cover is completely blown. I remember in the early 2000s too, there was, or maybe it was like mid 2010s, where there was a guy that got busted for another like DC sex ring. And there was all these rumors that it might have been like Johnny Gosh or something. It was like this dude with like a shaved head. You know what I'm talking about? And it was just like a flash in the pan thing. Like it was there and it was gone. And the speed at which it dissipated has always made me wonder. I don't think he was Johnny Gosh, but I think that he was in on that same Ted Gunderson style like sex ring.
You know what Johnny Gosh, Noreen Gosh is.
I
mom.
do. I
know
understand.
what she said, right?
I'm concerned about like speaking ill of the dead in this particular case. Like it would be the worst thing ever. Like if Johnny Gosh like met the most horrible fate, and now after the fact, people are like, and he turned into like this horrible DC sex. I don't know.
That would be terrible to believe, but like listening to Paul Bonacci and how he was groomed into that system and then utilized to like basically control the other victims, and like they included him in the abuse, and that seems to be a pattern in all these different DID cults where they're traumatizing these kids and fracturing their their identities into this dissociative state. And And like, I mean, it's I just think that when you see the story of Johnny Gosh and just what Noreen said about years later, him showing up on her doorstep and talking to her for a few hours and like saying that he's in hiding and all of this. And, you know, I don't know. It's she went and talked to Paul Bonacci and he allegedly gave her all so much detail. Like she was the things that he couldn't have known without knowing Johnny. And Paul says that it was Michael Aquino who ordered that abduction, right? Who's tied to Gladio, who's going and holding black mass rituals at foreign castles on his NATO trips, you know, and he's fully tied in with the Belgium network, and he's fully tied in to the Franklin scandal, and he's over at Presidio Child Daycare Center, and you know, utilizing and just procuring children and performing, you know, more satanic rituals for the Temple of Set. It's just totally insane.
Are you guys familiar with Dana Duda's work?
Yeah, I've had her on the show. She's great. I had her
Yeah, like,
on the show.
dude, like that's been blowing my mind, is like the connection between Aquino and the Satanists and like the animal shelters and stuff.
Dude,
like,
it's weird.
God, it's beyond weird, man. It's like taking something that seems so noble and then perverting it beyond any sort of redemption.
What is this, Adam? What the fuck are you? The snap connection? Are you trying to get the show? What is going on here? What?
This is the most wild claim in Nick Bryant's book that he went into detail of this concept of Rusty Nelson, and I think that this was where Nick Bryant was like, okay, this is too crazy. This should be so easy to disprove, and that's where he was like, and then is when I, you know, kind of like bought into it and started looking into it as if it were real. Was this Rusty Nelson crap?
Gary Caradori was apparently flying to, as he's investigating the Franklin scandal, the Franklin network. He's got all, like, he was flying to Chicago to allegedly meet with Rusty Nelson to acquire actual photographic evidence of this network. And that's when his plane disintegrated in midair and killed him and his son, right? When and
that never happens.
Yeah,
to the enemies of the state.
It reminded me immediately, like I said, I've been so deep in Watergate. It reminded me instantly of what happened to Howard Hunt's wife, Dorothy Hunt, who was apparently the courier for the payoffs from the Nixon administration, who was being blackmailed by E. Howard Hunt after Watergate.
You had the doctor that fucking Yeakey was working with. I forget his name. I can't think of it this very moment. It's driving me nuts.
You just don't get into a plane if you've got some compromise. If you have information that can lead to the arrest of Hillary Clinton, just do not get on a plane. Don't go to the gym. Don't lift weights. Don't do none of that.
Yeah.
Like put yourself in one of those bubble boy things and just like live like that.
And it was like within 24 hours, Nixon appointed someone.
Dr. Chumley. There you go.
Dude.
So that's the doctor I was thinking of. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Throw you off. It just hit me just then. All right. Yeah, Dr. Chumley. Yeah. And I believe the rumors are he was one of the guys who threw up red flags the day of, kind of like, what the fuck are you guys doing? There were people that were trying to get treated when they didn't really have injuries. And he's like, what the fuck? And supposedly he worked with Yeakey. I believe Tonia in her original interview actually corroborated that they seemed to have some sort of relationship, and then he dies in a plane crash. So, yeah.
Pattern recognition is all too real.
Yeah.
It's nice when they tie themselves up with a little bow like that, though.
Yeah. Like, oh, you're a pilot on the side for fun? Oh, that'll work easy for us.
Exactly.
Civil Air Patrol, oh, that's cool.
Oh my God, man.
Well, all right. I think we're near the end here. So, I mean, I think this has been a great episode. We've covered a lot of topics. I mean, we've had quite a few call-ins, and I mean, obviously we had Tonia Yeakey call in, so that was cool.
That's
shit.
Epic, man.
So that's something special. That's her second, actual broadcast and anything in like over a decade. So. You know, hey, there we go. We did that tonight.
Thank you. That was a blessing. That was so cool.
It really was bucket list. Yeah, 100%. You're right.
Pretty neat. That's pretty neat, guys. Well, all right, Tommy, where can people find you at? And, you know, I do want to say, like, whatever me or my audience can do in any way to facilitate your OKC work, particularly, because, like, I'm, like, reading through that. I'm like, yup, I'm in. Like, so whatever I can do in the future, if you ever do try to do that, whatever promotion, anything, any sort of way, I'll definitely lend my help there. Because I do think that will be phenomenal.
Well, keep supporting all the comics. That's the best way. Like we've got a campaign right now. Yeah. Well, the first one right now is chosenone.com. That's the one that we're running a campaign for with Juan Ayala. It's got Sam Tripoli in it. It's got Alex Stein in it. It's kind of like a silly one that makes like a self-referential joke about podcasters, in particular conspiracy podcasters, themselves being a secret society that's like controlling the gates. And you know, I really love the concept of it.
Did you
because
make
it's just
Alex Stein a gatekeeper? Like,
Alex Stein is
like joking that he's controlled up.
That is great.
He literally is controlling access to Tartaria in the
oh my god.
So and this is chosenone.com, and as soon as chosenone.com is over, which is in like 10 days, I think, like the very next week is when I'm going to launch an adult series called Illuminati, which is at adultoccult.com. Yeah, Illuminati. Adultoccult.com. And this one has, for example, I'll give you a couple of, one of them is the rumor that Aleister Crowley banged Barbara Pierce, which was Barbara Bush's mom. Well, I just assumed this as fact. And it's a full, in detail, explicit 12-page illustration, full color. You see Aleister Crowley's dong. You see Barbara Bush's mom's.
Oh my god!
Everything in their full glory. There's another story in this series called American Liberty, and it's where humans are basically run off of Earth. They are completely extinct, but the human spirit finds itself possessing the Statue of Liberty. So the Statue of Liberty goes across the nation, making love to all the other national monuments, trying to like repopulate the nation with like these pyramids. So yeah, this is the Illuminati series. This is going to come out right after Chosen One's done. As soon as this one's over, which will be a month, it's going to be the NASA comic. And the reason I'm saying is like every time one of these becomes wildly successful, like it pays for itself plus the print, every other extra dollar just rolls into the next project. So the goal is that hopefully I get this like snowball effect where money rolls from one project into the next, and at a certain point, the OKC one then becomes viable, at least the first issue.
Dude, I'm telling you, that'll be groundbreaking. Like, especially, we were even talking, like, ideas of you doing, like, side things. Because, like, one thing I've noticed, there is, like, the main through line, like, narrative of, like, hey, this is what we got to work you with to get you an understanding. But there's these fun side stories, like, I mean, I guess maybe fun might not be the best way to put it. Obviously, you have Yeakey, you have Trinidad, which Trinidad, like the saga that itself can be broken up into multiple because obviously they can carry on to his brother.
And it can carry all the way into Fast and Furious if you wanted to, right?
Oh, yeah, and then you got like the Kehoe brothers, which it ties into weird Millar's weird fucking cult stuff that was going on and that fucking weird angle going on over there. So there's so many little side spots.
You got Elohim City, you've got the sheep dip angle in full detail, you've got the time overseas, you've got the fact that McVeigh was apparently working as security in a place that had like high UFO sort of report. There's so many interesting, weird little facets about this entire story.
It's a whole cinematic universe. It's like a whole comic cinematic universe. Well, not even cinematic, but you know what I mean? Like literally a shared universe. Like
it's Marvel Civil War.
Yeah, but just OKC. Like the people don't realize how many like little weird tangents there are that you can go down that tie into. And this is, I guess, the nature of conspiracies in general. And this is even just following facts. You find this person ties into this person, ties into that person, ties into this person. Because obviously you could tug on Millar and you'd be like, oh, he was back in the OSS days. Who the fuck was he mingling with? Like you can just go nuts with it. Like, and so especially with something like OKC, and I really think your creative vision seems to be like in the way that I would want it to be exposed to people, and I think that will really, that'll catch for people. I think if it's put out, so I'm excited to see that be an eventuality. That got me hyped when I was like skimming through it. I was like, yo, whoa.
I mean, if you look through any of my existing comics, like for example, the very first comic I ever put out was Time Samplers issue 1, and it's called Escape from Jekyll Island. And that book has some of the deepest references. It's got King Kill 33 references in it. A large premise of it was built on the Life and Death of the Carnival by what the hell is his name? The guy that helped write 33. But he has this whole theory about that in Jekyll Island they were doing another like more blackmail-esque type stuff, but it was before blackmail really existed. and that Alexander Graham Bell was there, and he was like fully nude, and they were messing with this guy called Cock Robin, and it was the most wild stuff ever. James Shelby Downer, that's the guy's name. But the book, the first issue I come out with, it has all that in full detail. Alexander Graham Bell's there. He's a full nudist. It talks about Skull and Bone Society. It talks about HARP. It talks about V2K. It talks about like every little intricate detail. I've got a full illustration of silent weapons for quiet wars with direct quotes from like the alleged Lord Rothschild. It goes into the founding of the Federal Reserve and how like all this works. So like all of those intricate details are in there, but then I also like to load it up with like dick jokes and drug humor and things that make it so it's harder to pick apart and criticize, because like as you turn the page, there's like a cartoon vibrator. So yeah, you can criticize some of my takes on it, but like the research is there. If you're deep into it, you'll notice all of it. But I also try my damn best to not make it so serious and like doom scrolly, like
not like an Ayn Rand book where it's like I have a narrative to sell you, and I'm going to make my story very much line up for this. Like the moral of the story beats you over the head. No, like I really, and I'm like, when I've like these conspiracies, I've thought of them too, and there's enjoyable ways to approach them. Like that's part of the intrigue for people. Again, you're like, what? This crazy thing happened? It's not like it. So yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I'm very excited for. Like, is there anything else you want to tell people about, like that you got cooking in the oven right now, or
I mean, that's the biggest. We could spend another hour. I've got so many things going on. I got a game coming out that's based on early research into the Satanic Panic in the early 1900s, which. Man, like every one of these big stories, the adrenochrome thing, I was going to write a comic and I was like, what would happen if you really took adrenochrome? Wait, has anyone actually taken it? Oh my God, this seems more real than I thought. It's not just 100. So that's where that started. And then this Satanic Panic research was like, oh, right. Yeah. Satan in Hollywood. This can't go back to before like the 60s, right? Oh, wait, it goes to the 40s. Oh, wait, the first Hollywood movie that featured Satan was by Thomas Edison. That can't be real. That seems silly. You know what I mean? Like all these different things. So I've got a video game that's on Steam. At least you can sign up on Steam, called Lucifer Lives in Lower Manhattan. And it's about how early horror fiction writers, the guy that was the assistant to freaking Aldous Huxley, another name that pops up in every damn conspiracy theory, but the personal assistant to Aldous Huxley gets booked for meeting a actual satanic coven that's meeting in like high society in New York City, and they do all these incantations and summon all sorts of. So I have a video game that explains that whole story because I couldn't figure out how to fit it in like a single graphic novel. It just needed so much more context. So that's another thing I got out. I've got if you look at Sound Scientists on Spotify or any other music group, it's all like conspiracy music. I got a song about the ATF. It's just about how they want to shoot your dog. I've got one called Frazzle Drip, Pizzagate. I've got so many fun ones.
Yeah, dude, you really are like tackling like all mediums. It's wild seeing like the spectrum that you're nailing. I'll be like,
spectrum is the right word.
Yeah, you are hitting like a bunch of different mediums. You're like killing it in the merch game too. I'm gonna have to get one of your sticker packs one of these days. Everyone makes fun of me because I have like fucking comic book shit. I'm like, well, I'm gonna swap them out for some cool parapolitics stuff.
Oh yeah! If you wait a few weeks, I've got some brand new Nicktoon occult inspired stickers. I've got Patrick as a Starfort. I've got Doug as Aleister Crowley. And I can't remember what I've got Heifer from Rocko's Modern Life as Moloch.
Wow. I know. I got to read the ATF story, man. That's probably a good one.
Well, all right, Austin, where can people find you at? So we can
honestly, Thomas, I just got to say, man, that what you're doing is necessary, and it really does inspire me, because I honestly believe that the only way that we can defend ourselves as far as like the gradual tiptoe toward totalitarianism, like David Icke likes to say, is basically by creating these alternative systems that we can hopefully counter this movement with, and that includes a counter to Hollywood propaganda. And I think everything that you're doing is just very important, and I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, and so anyway, my work, I'm pretty sure that my next episode will probably be like I don't know, either about NASA and Jack Parsons and that sort of origin story, or because there are some crazy tangents there, but or something like I might actually cover Confessions of a DC Madam, because I am kind of obsessed with how it connects to so much that I'm researching as of now.
You want to. I can tell that's where you
dude,
want to
it's
go.
killing me,
Just
bro.
go. Just do it. You keep being like, "Oh, I'm trying to go on like more light asides," and you're like,
I'm gonna have to do it.
I'm being dragged into the darkness." Like, well, that's what's
It's
compelling
bullshit.
you. So I don't know what to tell
I'm
you.
resisting it. I know. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. But anyway, yeah, follow me on Instagram at Underclass Pod. Yeah, and then on Instagram at the Underclass Podcast, on Twitter at Underclass Pod, and then support me at Buzzsprout. Anything I appreciate, and yeah, that's basically it. Anything, any audio streaming platform you can find my podcast. It's the Underclass Podcast.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for everyone showing up. I do want to remind you guys, for my normal content, you guys can get it early, about a week early, patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. But for this Already Dead show, this is a live stream. But you guys do get the exclusive access to be able to come on StreamYard link, go video-wise. So you can come on that way, and you get preference in the chat. But yeah, I do want to give a shout-out to my Patreon sponsors real quick. And I got Toad, my co-host on Tower Gang at Tower Gang Toad. I have at Abrogate D's, then Kevin B. Clark, a full-time guitarist and private music teacher in the New York area, then at ZOVERACK, Nat_Infinite Zeal, then Jacob Daniel of the Biblical Anarchy Podcast, and then Tim Tuttle at John Klebold's made me a bunch of edits, then at Stinky Sock 420, singer of the band Bender, which is a metalcore band. So if you like metalcore like me, you'll dig that. I appreciate you guys helping me do what I do. And yeah, dude, this has been a dope episode. Appreciate you coming on, Tommy. I really thought this was a great conversation, great call-ins. This was a fun time. But all right, we're out. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that gay shit, and we out.